Welcome and well met, my brave little spark. How long you've wandered, burned bright as a star. Oh, I have awaited you patiently all this time.
Let's do our first dungeon, everybody.
Past everything, now sing with me once more.
You're smelling the food.
Smelling the food. It's a green board with the food. Very good.
Crazy.
Oh
God! Actually, just cut him in half. Let's fucking go.
Oh, for real? Okay. See.
They just killed him. No. Just give me a gentle pat while you're taking a sip.
Remember the rain, near and far beloved, each drop a blessing from heavens above, and how as time flowed on those waters became one, streams, rivers, and lakes reaching for the horizon, and far beyond they carry onward, however changed with each breath, reflection by the
Clink says it was me. I gambled the whole race.
Oh my god!
It's the boys.
Guess they're a little bit lazy.
sinking deeper and deeper in calm embrace, loving tides sweep in and bear you down. Should you meet a soul rising surface space, with your unbeating heart wish them well.
When we began Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn on March 29th, 2023, shortly after the second anniversary of REFFOID, we had no idea how long it would take. Nobody really does when they start a game like this. MMOs just have this indefinite gameplay time that is totally different depending on the individual, both in hours played and days that it takes to play. Even just trying to consider main story alone, it's only something you're gonna know after you do it yourself. And so the unknown journey began that day with the first steps of what I called REFFOID: The Final Season. With a couple generations left to discuss and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's due date still unknown, one thing was for sure. Come the next REFFOID anniversary, I'd either be finished or dead. Yet here we are, 14 months later, and somehow we're still doing this. This quote-unquote final year of REFFOID was when the show became the focus of most of my free time. I stopped making any other kind of video on the channel, and now episode production was in like a flow. It wasn't as simple as going game to game. Now, along with whatever video I was making next, I would also be playing the next Final Fantasy game while also having to stop at least twice a week to progress in our 14 adventure. Episodes were getting longer, then came the Discord, then the Dollar Crew, and soon enough the weekly streams. The show had blossomed into something so much bigger than it was in this final year, and at the cusp of that was always 14. I owe a lot to this game, and it's pretty bittersweet to be at the end of the story after 14 months and 300 hours of game. But when talking about Endwalker, it always comes with a little asterisk, doesn't it? The outsiders will usually ask, like, okay, what's this Dawn Trail thing? I thought they made a whole expansion That was the end. I thought that was the end. And then the 14 fans come in. It was the end. It was the end of the Hydaelyn Zodiark arc, and Dawntrail starting a brand new one. Oh, so Dawntrail isn't like a sequel. No, it is. Oh, so, but you don't have to play the 300 hours up through Endwalker to play Dawntrail? No, you do. But it was the end of the story, and this is a new one. Yes. Why are they doing that? Money! Even with the knowledge of Dawntrail just over the horizon coming soon, I still went into Endwalker with different expectations than any of the other expansions before it. This game is Square Enix's cash cow. Nobody thought it was actually going to be the last piece of content to come out, but instead of filling time and stringing us along with other stuff for as long as possible, leaving all the big mysteries up until like the real end when the game dies, they decided we're going to give them the ending when the game's like at its most popular. And I give that a lot of respect. Endwalker's goal was to leave no major stone unturned and truly give a definitive end to this 8-year story. After Shadowbringers brought me around to fully enjoying the story, I had one question going in. How hard is it really gonna commit to that goal? When those credits hit, is it gonna really feel like an ending? Or am I just gonna be thinking about the next quest I know I'm gonna unlock once those credits end? This game has put me through 8 credit sequences already, and most of them don't even conclude the single expansion arc they were meant to conclude. The unfortunate need for a live service game to always give players not quite everything they want so they never feel fully satisfied, so they never leave, is just a big problem for everyone involved, the writers and the players. So my hope was that now, after all the goodwill and the fans' proof of dedication over the years, will this critically acclaimed MMO RPG with free trial up to level 70 give us a finale worthy of being called Endwalker. But before we get there, we must start at the beginning. Or really, like the ending of Shadowbringers. So Shadowbringers' ending is a good example of what I mean. We certainly defeated the big bad who was introduced, but there's still a handful of other major problems still in our hands. Like how none of our friends can travel back to our original world, or how Grahatia is doomed to die if we try anything with that, or how Xenos and the Ascians continue to weasel their way around almost every post-credits scene they can, so they can say threatening things to us or whatever. So, time for Patch 5.1. Vows of Virtue, Deeds of Cruelty. Our friends can't return to the source, but we can. It's great to be back home after that crazy adventure. Don't worry, nothing important happened while we were gone. Actually, we gotta go right back because, you know, that's where all our problems are anyway, in that other world. There's gotta be a way to bring our friends home with us that doesn't involve killing Graha. Y'shtola notices that when we travel between worlds, our possessions come with us. What if we can bring all our friends' souls over in a vessel of sorts? Like, for instance, the White Orosite. So we look for a magic lady, kind of this world's Matoya equivalent, who might know what to do, and we get her attention by burning all the furniture in her house. She agrees to help, and we get completely sidetracked doing a very long tangent quest helping Mr. Chai run for office. This takes up the bulk of the patch until things get cooking in the end, with Gaius and Astinian taking on the Ascians and failing. Xenos makes his designated cameo again, and now that he's got his body back, along with him is a new Ascian in a white robe who talks very silly. Who is he? And then also Ardbert shows up in Yulmore, and he's not a ghost anymore? What's that about? I don't know. Patch 5.2, Echoes of a Fallen Star. Gaius visits the Rising Stones to warn us that the Empire is creating a new Ultima weapon, so we kinda need to get our friends back fast. Alphinaud proposes we rally the townsfolk to correct the fake news going around that Ardbert and the Warriors of Light were the ones who flooded the Land of Light intentionally because they're like evil monsters. We can't have everyone hating on our boy, so we rally the town. But the event gets crashed by the man himself, who joins in and invigorates the people to rise up and be warriors of light themselves. And now everyone's going around thinking they could be superheroes and they love Ardbert. Okay, hooray, I guess we did it, but who is this guy? That's not Ardbert. We return to base to be like, okay, that's totally not him, right? That's an Ascian. That's an Ascian, right? Alphanaut, go spy on this guy, because that's an Ascian. We determine this has to be Elidibus because we know that Xenos knocked him out of his own body to get it back. So he had to go somewhere. I guess he took Ardbert. He doesn't waste any time trying to fool us when we confront him in private. He says Emmett Selk was an idiot. You guys are idiots too, and you're not gonna stop me. Stop you from doing what? I'm not telling you, and he leaves. So we go back to the ruins to try and learn more about Ascian history. The heart of Zodiark was summoned through the sacrifice of Elidibus, and another person named Vana was sacrificed to form a new god that would fight Zodiark back, assuming this is Hydaelyn. Well, if Elidibus was sacrificed, what is he still doing here? Back to the spirit vessel plan. They figure they can use Grahatia's blood to make the vessels work, but his crystallization issue is becoming a painfully bigger problem. Another post-ending scene, another check-in with Xenos. He walks through Amarat as it's exploding, but it was just a dream. The white-robed figure with him says, oh, that was just the end of the world that's coming soon. Oh. Patch 5.3. Reflections in Crystal. Time to hit the books where we read about the origins of the Warrior of Light, a figure who was chosen by the Mother Crystal and was given the gift of life so he may cast out the darkness. The illustrations show the original FF1 designed guy who started it all before it became a name for anybody with this outstanding ability. That was really cool, how they kind of tied it all the way back to like quote-unquote the first Warrior of Light from FF1 is almost like a meta commentary on the franchise. Later we get a surprisingly intimate heart-to-heart with Elidibus, who says his only goal is to bring about the perfect world and that we are an evil monster, death incarnate, and he will strike us down, body and soul. Graha's like, why don't you just get out of here, man? And he responds by shooting him with a ray of darkness. The Scions are still struggling as well. Their bodies are growing colder back home, and their corporeal forms are getting weaker here. We're running out of time. Most of this one is trying to find a way to bring the Scions back, but we get interrupted by warriors made of actual light and have to fight them all while racing back to the Crystal Tower. This was all Elidibus is doing. He used Grahatia's method of summoning other warriors against us, but we still bested him. Now, after all these expansions, it's time for him to make his last stand. Graha begins to fully crystallize, but he's still got one move left as we approach Elidibus for battle. He absorbs the light warriors he summoned to transform himself into the Warrior of Light. The Warrior of Light, for a truly epic final boss fight.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay, I missed this. No big deal.
Oh, that's sick. Sit up day.
After we beat him, Graha uses his last move to absorb Elidibus into the Crystal Tower itself, but doing this fully turns Graha to crystal. His memories and soul are absorbed by the spirit vessel, so all that's left is to see if this plan is gonna work. It's finally time for the rest of the Scions to go home and say farewell to the friends we've made in the first. Lots of tearful goodbyes, especially from Reen, who over the course of Shadowbringers became a part of our crew, but now she's gotta stay behind. And then the whole city says goodbye to us. It's a really sweet ending. With all that in order, we take the spirit vessels of our friends and pray, return to the rising stones.
And should our souls scatter unto the wind, still we shall live on.
Thank you. My body feels like a sack of popotos.
We restore the Crystal Tower. Our friends wake up. Grahatia comes back from his vessel and officially joins the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. This final celebration cutscene happy ending was like my favorite in the entire game. It's filled with so much personality from everyone involved. It was just so hype. Even though it wasn't really building to something, it's just like, well, we're all back. And it was great. This is the true ending of Shadowbringers, and it was the most final feeling ending so far. Of course, big mysteries still remained, but Elidibus is gone. We fought the Warrior of Light, and everyone is happy. It was a legendary batch of quests. But speaking of him, we can't have an ending without checking on the true big bad. Xenos and his white-robed guy are still here, still brooding and still waiting to strike. The white robe reveals his hood to show none other than Asahi, Yatsuyu's brother and Xenos' fanboy, who we dealt with in just a couple of Stormblood patches. Of course, this isn't him, this is just his body being used as a vessel for this new guy named Fandaniel, who's an absolute lunatic. So what's he doing here, what's his motivation, and is Xenos gonna do anything? I don't know, thus we begin the setup for Endwalker. Patch 5.4, Futures Rewritten. Lise arrives to the Rising Stones like, hey guys, how you been? You do anything fun while I was gone? Nah. Oh well, anyway, I was about to meet with people in Alamigo about fighting a war with the Empire again. Wanna come? No, let's go do something else with Alice. She's looking to use what we learned healing Sin Eaters in the first and adapt it to hopefully work on the Tempered, our own versions of humans turned into monsters in the source. With Sid and Graha's help, we unlock an old Allegan archive about previous attempts to find a cure. And we work on a test case, which ends up working out, and we heal Gabu. Remember Gabu? With Gabu and our healing power, we try to convince the local beast tribe to stop summoning Titan, cause we don't wanna fight him again. And that leads into a bunch of drama with Merwulb and the pirates of Limsa Lominsa, not super important until a giant mysterious tower of purple energy appears off the coast, and they're spawning all across the land. Fandaniel chooses now to properly introduce himself to us, and he brings along Lunar Bahamut to say he's going to bring about the final days. But why?
Because I want wretched creatures who ask such meaningless questions to die! I want you all to die! And I want to die too! Oh, yes! I want to die!
Alright. And in the post-scene, Lise gets attacked by a mind-controlled soldier, and Xenos gives his usual Thanos cameo. Patch 5.5, Death Unto Dawn. Group meeting, what do we do about all this? Well, we're gonna send our involved and Fordola behind enemy lines to investigate a tower so we can get the upper hand. The towers basically emit a mind control wave to temper those in its vicinity, but since those do have the echo, they're immune. So while they do that, we get tasked with tracking down Estinian, who helps us convince Tiamat to join our side once we untemper her. If we're gonna have an end game, we need to assemble the Avengers. That's what most of this one is, just asking people to join us and help us. One envoy we were looking for arrives to negotiate help with us. Someone from a place we haven't been yet, Old Charlian, Alphanaud and Alice's homeland, and the envoy is their dad. He came all this way to say, nah, we won't help you. This is just a petty squabble with the Empire. A petty squabble? Look around, the world is literally ending, Dad. No, you're all idiots. You think war is bad, then why are you fighting it? Ever think about that? And Alphanaud's like, but father, please, you must listen. Shut up, son. Actually, you're not my son anymore, and you're not my daughter. I'm leaving. Goodbye. I guess we're not gonna get help from them then. So we head into a huge fight with the lunar primals with all we got. A bunch of these gods we faced in the past return in their lunar form working for the Empire, and we get to play as multiple characters in a long single-player duty, the first one with checkpoints. It sounds more fun than it was. We win the battle, but not the war. Fandaniel teleports away saying, I'll see you in the next one. So the plan now is to continue investigating the towers, potentially actually move into the Garlean Empire for the first time, and investigate Charlian, because seriously, what was that dad guy's deal? And one last time we end with another Xenos scene. Ooh, you're so threatening, Xenos. I'm so scared. That's all the Shadowbringers patches. This group takes the Heavensward route of really hiding the true ending of the Shadowbringers story around patch 3. And aside from the side tangents like helping Mr. Try run for mayor, it was a pretty good time. And that boss fight was even crazier than the base expansion one. No offense to Emmett, he's a much more interesting character than Elidibus, but Elidibus just has that street cred, you know what I'm saying? He's been there for so long, he's been there at the beginning. He's always been messing around with us, and now he's gone. That was the first time when I thought, like, okay, alright guys, maybe you really are gonna end this thing. With him out of the way, the only big bad I can see ending this story is that Zodiark guy they keep going on about. Or I guess Xenos. It's been a whole expansion and 2 sets of patches since Xenos took the coward's way out and sliced his own throat, and he has still done nothing. It's the one major hang-up I still have with this story. Guys, what the heck is the point of Xenos? It's getting out of hand. To me, he felt like the villain of the week when he was introduced in Stormblood, and we dealt with him as such. The patches decided to revive him, and I gave them the benefit of the doubt, like they'd take this opportunity to develop him more and get me interested. And the only thing he's accomplished was killing the Emperor so he can sit on the throne and wait for us to come fight him? Emmett Selk was introduced and dealt with within the same base expansion, but I found him way more interesting and entertaining than any of the villains that came before him, including Xenos. Plus, slight spoiler alert, Emmett Selk gets more character development posthumously in Endwalker than Xenos does in his entire existence. I mean, Fandaniel becomes more threatening than him in a few patches as he just sits there and watches a villain do actual villain things. What is the point of Xenos? It's got to the point where I'm genuinely wondering, asking this without a shred of sarcasm, do the writers want us to take Xenos seriously, or is he supposed to be a joke? Are they intentionally making him a joke because he's just talking so big while we're completely ignoring him dealing with the literal end of the world? What's the point of Xenos was the second big question I had going into Endwalker's main story. But of course, as usual, we'll save that for last. Time for what's become my favorite part about streaming 14 weekly, where everyone comes in and teams up and we take on the raids for the current expansion. The Post-Shadowbringers Raids series is the loosely Final Fantasy VIII themed Eden raids, featuring souped up versions of primals from the past, but the designs and fights are completely new. Some of them were so hard I barely participated because I was actually just on the floor the whole time. The story focuses on Reen as she discovers Eden, the first Sin Eater, I guess, and she struggles with the loneliness that comes with being the Oracle of Light, especially when her new dad, Thancred, has to leave to his homeworld so he doesn't die. But she's not all alone as we meet the Oracle of Darkness, Gaia, and the two of them go from polar opposites to 2 peas in a pod. It's very cute. It's also very weird and existential, as anything Final Fantasy VIII related should be. The final boss is super long and it took us like 3 or 4 tries. Pretty rough, but I give it all a big thumbs up. The 24-man Alliance Raid series is a huge crossover event with Nier, specifically Nier Automata. I don't know much about that game aside from its aesthetic, but that aesthetic is deeply felt in these dungeons, probably thanks to its creator, Yoko Taro, helping out with the design and story. It's also apparently canon to the real game story in some way, although everything Nier crosses over with is, because they love being meta and fourth wall breaky. They even have a designated crossover character who appears in these kind of events named 2P, not 2B. At least that's what chat told me. I should get around to playing those Niers someday. Anyway, the raid dungeons are huge and action-packed with the epic Automata soundtrack playing as you run through them. They must have wanted you to fully appreciate what they made because most of the missions in between the dungeons make you run through the dungeons again by yourself, like just to take in the views. A stark contrast to the previous raids, the tactics ones, where everything in between the dungeons took place in one single room where people just talked and talked and talked. My lack of familiarity in the subject matter didn't take away from my enjoyment though, as the dungeons have a lot of creative, bullet hell inspired fights that were just a lot of fun on top of the already chaotic nature of Alliance raids. One fight towards the end temporarily turns you into a spaceship that shoots bullets while dodging bullets. It's a straight up shmup. Like, I know that's probably a great reference, but it doesn't even matter if I don't know it. The fact that they went all out of their way to make that happen just for one boss in one dungeon in their MMO is awesome enough on its own. The Trial series this time is somewhat based on Final Fantasy VII, only in the boss fights though, since you fight the Ruby weapon, the Emerald weapon, and the Diamond weapon. You fight the Sapphire weapon too by yourself in a Gundam mech battle, right after the game makes you play a stupidly long tutorial on how to control this mech, even though you'll never do it again. There was like a lot of story to this one, something about some young orphans that Gaius adopted before the war, and a new Legatus who loves torturing people and sweating. I was more interested in the fights, and they were pretty good, I guess. I like the diamond fight.
Do we want to be on the other side?
What happens if I rescue you?
You killed me. You murdering monster!
That's it for the raids. Now for some non-expansion specific events I took part in during my Shadowbringers patches playthrough. I don't really do this much, but in my Final Fantasy XV review, I wished upon a Yoshi P for one thing. Just one event I wanted to come back before I finished my journey. Sadly, in 14, crossover events are limited time only, so you can't play it anymore. I've heard of this one. The crossover awarded you with the Regalia as an in-game mount with 4 seats, and I'm incredibly jealous of my friends who have it. The quest started in 2019, then came back in 2021. So my fingers are crossed that that's like a 2-year pattern thing. We're overdue for it to come back, if it ever comes back. I'm praying I get my chance before the end of Dawn Trail. Please, Yoshi P. They did it, boys. They really did it. For a brief 2-week period beginning the day before I died, the Final Fantasy XV crossover event returned. And with it, the car. That's where the story begins. Noctis finds himself lost in Eorzea with his car broken down, telling us that Cid would know what to do. So we get our Cid, and he's like, what the heck is this thing? How am I supposed to know how to fix it? And we basically go goof off with Noctis while Cid tries to figure that out. I loved fighting side by side with Cool Guy Noct while wearing my Cool Guy Squall outfit. And I had my first helping a noob moment. Somebody was fighting one of these fates you have to do, and he was like under-leveled, so he was dying. And I was moving on, but I stuck back to be his healer for a bit just to keep him in the fight. That felt nice. Ain't that what MMOs are all about? Aside from fighting, you and Noct get to have your own little heart-to-heart camp out where he talks about how he's gotta be there for his friends and stuff. Of course, you go fishing with them, and you take a picture together. They really touch on every 15-related activity they could think of. In the end, you fight Garuda, just like in the other side of this crossover in 15. Noct grants you the power of Warp Strike, which completely goes against the lore, but allows for a fun and unique battle where you get to use it as an attack and an escape route just like in the real game. And you can execute link strikes with him. All around, this was a great time. It's nice to have a crossover with a game I actually cared about. But then I was shocked to end the quest and be rewarded with Noctis's outfit. That's nice. But where's the car? Finishing the quest only grants you the permission to purchase the car for 200,000 gold saucer bucks. And you have to buy it in the 2 weeks before the event ends. Well, I guess now's a good time than ever to review the Gold Saucer. Just like in Final Fantasy VII, the Gold Saucer is your go-to when you want to get away from all your troubles and just goof around with some mini-games. Unless your troubles are limited time item grind related. In this game, it's themed more like a wacky, dim-lit casino than in an amusement park like in 7. You can play some small-time carnival-type games for pennies, but that's not going to get you anywhere. You gotta play Mahjong. Actually, that's not going to get you anywhere either. You can participate in daily and weekly lotteries, but your chances of winning are, well, it's the lottery. You can play Triple Triad from 8, but that's like an entire metagame that you don't have time for. Perhaps the most efficient way to earn sauce points fast is through gates. They're like fates, but they're gates. Every 20 minutes, a new gate event goes underway. These are multiplayer challenges that don't really pit players against each other, but it's fun to struggle with other people by your side. Sometimes it's little chance events, sometimes a Disney World Buzz Lightyear shooting game, but most of the time it's one of the few platforming challenges where you simply have to get to the end before time runs out. I couldn't believe they put platforming in an MMO. It's about as awkward to control as you might imagine, and there's no checkpoints. So the risk you take going off the beaten path for a collectible statue that'll earn you extra points is all the more risky. The whole thing is just an extremely silly sight. Waves of people falling to the dreaded pinecone jump. One of the levels reminds me of that Getting Over It game. It's a single wall with little pegs coming out and you just gotta keep going up. But if you overshoot a jump or make one little mistake, you are all the way at the bottom again. It would be funny if the car wasn't on the line. Every big fall like that would just hurt me a little inside. I spent like an entire day just jumping through these levels, getting a couple thousand at a time, but I needed 200,000. And that's when I learned about the Fashion Report, a weekly event where you receive some clues about what the judges want you to wear, and you have to figure it out by the end. You gotta hunt down these clothes pieces, get the right dyes, and take your picture to their satisfaction. You earn fashion points depending on how accurate you are, but if you can just earn 80, you get 60,000 sauce bucks. I truly have no idea how people figure this out on their own, but I know most look for the weekly report delivered by Kayoko Star on Twitter. She has this detailed template she fills at the end of every week showing you exactly what items will be accepted in which slots and what paint can earn you bonus points, and most importantly, what is the easiest obtainable set that earns you the 80-point minimum. This entire subsection of the FF14 community is held up by one Catgirl VTuber Twitter account who does this work out of the goodness of her heart. Since the 15 event was only 2 weeks long, her tips earned me an easy 120,000 sus dollars, and the rest was made up from my epic jumping skills. And thus I earned the only item I ever grinded for in an MMO, the mother effing regalia. Oh my lord. Yeah, we're driving. Oh, we're driving. Woo! I'm torn on this experience because on one hand, grinding sucks, and I probably would not have been able to do it if it weren't for Kayoko. On the other hand, this car is even more special to me because I earned it. I put in the work. It wasn't just given away to everyone who played the event like Noctis's outfit. I drive this thing with pride, and I'll never ask Yoshi P for anything ever again. I doubt I'll ever get a mount cool enough to replace it anyway. Or will I? The long-awaited Final Fantasy XIV crossover event also premiered during my Endwalker playthrough, and coincidentally, during my 16 playthrough as well. Don't worry, I won't be spoiling the plot of the game here. I'll talk about where the story takes place in the next video. But if you're familiar with any of the crossover events, it plays out pretty similarly. Main guy is stranded in Eorzea and he doesn't know why. Help him fight things. It's funny to walk around with Clive and show him the sights of my hometown in Gridania as he's in the middle of an existential crisis. It's more funny to think that 16 runs in the same engine as 14, so this might just be the same model but much lower quality. Same can be said for Ifrit, which is the main boss you fight in the questline, so now there's 2 different Ifrits in Eorzea, I guess. The fight itself is based on an exact specific fight from 16, and I coincidentally just played that part before doing the crossover, so I was feeling some deja vu. Like the 15 event, Clive grants you access to his own signature moves, such as Dodge Button. They try incorporating the precision dodge mechanic from 16 where you press the button at the last minute and are granted a counter attack. But I guess they didn't expect 14 players to be good enough with the timing, so they actually count down 3, 2, 1 right in the center of the screen. You kinda can't mess it up. And you get his trademark uppercut Phoenix Strike too. Game doesn't care if you're a white mage, you're gonna punch Ifrit in the jaw. I think Warp Strike was the more fun mechanic though. Actually, the 15 event in general was more fun. It ran you through more activities and let you hang out with Noct more. The 16 event felt very quick in and out. Like he shows up, he's like, oh, I'm a sad boy. I'm sad about everything and I don't know why. And then you fight Ifrit and he leaves. Actually, Torgal, his wolf buddy, leads him back home. And for completing the event, you get Clive's outfit and Torgal as a mount. No gold saucer grinding required. Now, I've yet to complete Final Fantasy XVI, so I've not grown fully attached to Torgal just yet. The regalia will remain my mount of choice, but I'll definitely bring Torgal out every once in a while. And that's all for extra side stuff this time, so let's dig into the new features of Endwalker. As usual, new areas. Your home base is Sharlayan, a utopia of knowledge and agriculture. But the story leads you all over the place, so there's not really a consistent theme. I welcome it though, because all the areas were fun in their own way. They finally added a new healer job, the Sage, and Athenod takes it up. They call it a barrier healer that uses walls and defensive buffs. Seems cool, but I think I'm a white mage for life. Then there's a new melee DPS, Reaper, who summons creatures from the void or something. Xenos becomes one of those. And they added the male Viera as a playable race, finally making Reffo's existence canon. As for new features, they put a major focus on enhancing the single-player questing, which I think was a good direction to take. Upon first arrival to Sharlayan, you'll be introduced to the new accompanying system. Now quests can have NPCs actually follow you around to your destination, instead of just walking off and disappearing into nothing. They're still gonna do that sometimes for story reasons, but this is a nice new feature to have. It even shows up in the 16 event when you're touring Gridania with Clive. It's simple, but I like it. These segments also offer little optional conversation zones where you can ask followers what they think about a place or your current situation. Anything that adds more character to these guides gets my seal of approval. They'll accompany you to dungeons too if you're doing the single player route. Now that you guys travel in a party more, you can actually build a team by choosing which scions might join you. I still wouldn't say it's more fun than doing it with friends, but it's more options, that's always good. Speaking of single player, my favorite change has been for the single player duties. I rarely talk about these, they're story events, usually a battle that you have to fight alone. They've just never been all that fun. Usually when I see one of these duties in front of me, I'm like, oh gosh, here comes another half-hour delay in the story. Because without the multiplayer part, there's usually no real challenge. They're balanced in the same way regardless of your job or class, and as usual, healers tend to take longer to damage things. But then you'll die to some instant kill attack you weren't ready for at the very end and have to start the whole thing over. It's aggravating. However, each expansion has been trying to add a little more spice to these events, and Endwalker just dumped all the spice. After some experimenting in the past with making other characters playable, there are now full duties featuring these characters. And that means the difficulty can actually be balanced to who you're playing. There's like a whole stealth mission with Thancred that felt like a real game, and a bunch of other cool ones I don't want to spoil until we get to the story section. It's just nice to know that it's not just the story getting more engaging, the gameplay is too, for the most part. Another addition to the single player experience is tailing missions where you gotta stay on someone's track, then jump behind a rock or something when they randomly decide to turn around. Slow, not very fun, and of course they're gonna do fake outs to catch you off guard, and if they do, you go all the way back. You've probably played something like this in a bunch of games before. Does anybody actually wanna play these? Finally, this isn't technically new in Endwalker, but it was new to me. Remember Aether Currents? You collect them around every new map, and once you get them, you unlock flying. It takes a lot longer now because there's so much more. Apparently, this is how many were in each expansion when they came out, but whenever a new one gets added, they reduce the amount down to 5 in the previous one. So we've been playing the shortened versions of all these Aether hunts. But once you catch up, now that we're at the latest expansion, from that point on, it's just gonna take even longer to unlock flying. Hooray! Endwalker's additions were mostly welcome, but how does it follow up Shadowbringers' huge improvement to my job of choice? Welcome back to White Mage Update. Well, this time around was mostly just an overall buff. It wasn't anything too exciting, but I'm still riding high off that Blood Lily update, so I didn't mind. I got a second charge on Divine Benison, my bubble ability got buffed, my attacks all got buffed, including Holy, which hasn't been updated since the base game. I got 2 new abilities. First one's Aqua Veil, which is a basic protect spell that reduces damage taken. It's all about comboing, so this is just like another shield I can dump on the tank until he feels nothing anymore. My level 90 ability is Liturgy of the Bell, a big plant I throw down, and whenever I get hit, everyone around it heals. It's like my little healing assistant. I can also just tell it to shoot out heals on its own, but they'll be less potent. The total healing power, if executed correctly, is like 2,000 per player, and with a cooldown of 3 minutes, it needs to be saved for the right moment or in absolute emergencies. The interesting part is that it's tied to me taking damage. In the last update with the Blood Lilies, they got me thinking I'm a DPS. Now I'm supposed to be a tank. If I'm smart about it, I could step into an attack on purpose, maybe even with the shield, and heal a chunk of the damage I took, as well as heal everyone else in the party for an overall huge net gain. I'm gonna start hurting myself on purpose. If you remember last time, Shadowbringers removed job quests and replaced them with role quests. So you no longer get an exclusive story for your chosen job, just one for any healer role or DPS or tank. I was bummed about that, and now they've gone a step even farther in making them less important by not even requiring them to beat the game anymore. They've become nothing more than an optional story now. But I still did it. The healer role quest is about tracking down a guy who transformed into a big monster and not healing him, but killing him. Though the real focus is on developing Fordola's character. I liked her a lot, but she's been stuck in a strange place, not really knowing what to do with herself since the conclusion of Stormblood. She's technically a good guy now, but the good guys don't really like her, probably because of all the murdering, and she still gets hazed by the racists. It seems there's no right place for her, and she almost gets consumed by the loneliness until Refo and Arnvald stand by her side and help her. The bulk of the quest line is a lot of talking about nothing with random people and no action at all until you actually get to fight the monster in the end, together with Fordola. After refusing to give us any positive response for as long as we've known her, she finally gives us a smile, and even high-fives Arnvald, reluctantly. I like the idea of using role quests as a spotlight episode for side characters, but since this is about Fordola, I wish there was just more Fordola. There's a lot of investigating about this random guy who turned into a monster who I don't care about. But if the role quests of the future focus more on the other characters, I guess I'll come around to them eventually. And that is it. Now all that's left is to answer the question proposed. Is Endwalker an ending? A definitive cap-off to a 10-year story or 8-year story, depending on how you look at it. Does it actually feel like a finale, or is it a gimmick that fills itself with more tangents and more teasers for the story to continue anyway? Well, I'll tell you this much. There's a lot to cover. So get comfy and cozy, and I'll walk you through it. Set sail to Old Sharlayan to show those old people what for. On the boat, we see a vision of human form Hydaelyn, confirming that she is a primal, like we learned in the last expansion, and she's growing weaker while Zodiark grows stronger as we approach the final days. They give us a hard time going through immigration. Apparently everyone in this city is uptight and sees us as the bad guys, but Alice and Alphinaud are excited to finally return home. This is when we get our standard expansion split, with one group going to investigate why the Sharlayans won't help us save the world, and the other group going to investigate what the deal is with the towers showing up everywhere. With the latter group, we meet a boy who developed warding talismans out of dragon scales to stop the mind-controlling effects of the towers. When we enter one of the towers, Fandaniel appears to bother us some more, but we actually get to learn some backstory about him. How he used to be an Allagan scientist named Amon who cloned the great emperor Xanday. Yeah, I finally realized that they pronounce it Xanday now. And he rose to ranks to become Fandaniel, which is like a high title person or something. Again, that Crystal Tower Raids series is apparently the most important side content you can do. When regrouping at the capital, Estinian can't get over the bad feeling he's getting from that kid we met. Turns out, he's basically a disguise for the true ruler of this nation, Virtra, long-lost brother of Tiamat and Bahamut. But unlike his siblings, he's lived with man for ages and actually not just tolerates them, but loves them and genuinely has good intentions for them. He calls on us to help destroy the tower. In the other quest line, we go to the library and we talk to farmers and stuff for like 2 hours. The farmers are being overworked, looking into unusually fast-growing plants and animals and grapes. The reason for this is to achieve some goal that was set in ancient times that they won't tell us. Well, that's sus. Kryl has been acting weird for a while until she becomes a host for Hydaelyn to talk through her to us again. And she gives us a special flower called an Elpis flower that changes colors depending on the emotion around it, saying it will help us in the darkest of times. Then we get arrested for reading. We read some banned books that told us at some point in history these Sharlayans stopped caring about helping society and only cared about preserving knowledge. And that switch happened right after they made a huge discovery within the ethereal sea. What happened there? Well, we still don't have our answer. The well is dry on that for now, so it's time to get back to the Tower of Zot. Yeah, the same name as the one for Final Fantasy IV, and same music too. And we fight those 3 Mage sisters from 4 in a very similar way. Final Fantasy IV fans were given an absolute feast this expansion, and you'll see more why in a bit. At the core of the tower is an aether-sucking machine running on a human limb. So we blow that thing the heck up. As a thank you, Virtra gives us boxes and boxes of these warding scales to give to anyone who needs them. So that's one problem kind of solved. Our soldiers won't be getting mind controlled anymore. The elephant alchemist lady we befriended during this questline notices the emotion flower Hydaelyn gave us and says she has a theory about it. She introduces us to a concept we haven't heard of yet called Akasha, a form of energy much like Aether yet entirely different, and so far unmeasurable, so it's only a theory for now. This energy is based off of human emotions and can be very strong with strong emotions, negative or positive. Well, that's like a big deal about this world we haven't known until now, but I don't really know what to do with this information currently. Satisfied with our work, some of the Scions come over to my place to hang out and eat cheeseburgers larger than our heads. With the scales delivered and the world united except Sharlayan, characters from all across past expansions come together and prepare to march onto Garlemald, the Empire's home base we've been hearing about since day one and somehow still haven't visited. It's a frozen wasteland where we're greeted by an army of tempered bad guys while Thancred has that little stealth mission of his own. After our victory, we're free to explore this horrible place to find any survivors, but there's almost nothing left here. When the Empire fell, it fell into civil war and practically wiped themselves out, becoming the wasteland we see now. We do find some survivors, but it's awkward because they're our enemy and they either don't trust or don't want our help. We do still get to learn some things from them, like how there's a conspiracy that the Emperor faked his death and he's really still out there communicating secret messages to his people through the radio. Whoa, you guys have radios here? We don't have that where we're from. The radio is emitting a protection field just like the talismans somehow, so only the believers managed to survive the tempering, which fueled this conspiracy even more. One girl is so paranoid about us that she thinks we're trying to trick and capture them, so she takes her sick sister to run far away from us while we weren't looking, and they both end up freezing to death in the snow, which was incredibly sad. One survivor, who we caught stealing from us, agrees to take us to his commander who's currently hiding out in an abandoned subway station with the rest of his crew. We're like, hey man, your people are literally starving and freezing to death. Can we spare you some rations? And he's like, no, you rebel scum, I'll never accept help from the likes of you. So we go away. We still decide to look for some power supplies to at least turn on the heaters in the subway station so people don't freeze to death. And when we bring them to him, he's like, oh, cool, power? No, don't use that on the heaters. Use that on the Magitech armor. We definitely need more war power. Like, are you kidding me, man? Then he steals Alice and Alphinaud as prisoners and demands we leave these grounds with our supplies behind us if we want them back. What a piece of garbage. But this does get us a really heartwarming scene with Alphinaud and Alice, two of them bonding over their personal struggles and just being really open with each other in a crappy prison situation. It was nice. We usually only get brother and sister bickering out of them, so this was just nice to see. So the commander guy is threatening an attack with those Magitechs that we just gave to him, but before he even gets to us, Thancred breaks the twins out and brings them back safe. Understanding that now at this point the Empire has failed so harshly in what they were working towards, the commander straight up shoots himself in the face, spilling his blood on the banner of the Empire. With no commander and no choice but to stay with us, the other Imperial guy who was stealing from us before accepts our allyship. And as he stands there looking around, holding hot cocoa, seeing people from every nation being friendly with each other, joking around, standing arm in arm, he just has a breakdown, wondering what the Empire was doing all this time. That's when disaster strikes. A nearby tower goes off, tempering the people around who weren't equipped with talismans. We try to help, but Fandaniel swoops in and takes us away. We wake up in a dining table with Xenos, but we're in a nameless soldier infantry's body. Fandaniel explains that the people's faith and prayer in the dead emperor gave rise to a new primal, Anima. And these towers have been drawing the Aether from the planet to fuel him. Xenos is like, yeah, that's cool, whatever, but bro, I can't wait till we fight, bro. It's gonna be so cool. As a test to see how strong we really are without our flesh body, he put us in this weak body and drops us across the land to see if we can run back to camp before he kills all our friends using our body. This is another really cool and intense single-player duty as we desperately dodge fights in hopes of making it back in time. Right as our friends happily greet our false image, we interrupt, and the bad boys give us a round of applause. The effect wears off and we get our body back, declaring that we need to invade that tower and stop Anima right now. But man, it sure is terrifying that they can seemingly just swap places with me whenever they want. This tower is a big dungeon where we defeat Anima in the end, but they still managed to use the built-up Aether to fire a beam to the moon in an attempt to break the seals holding Zodiark back. Yeah, he was being imprisoned on the moon, by the way. So Fandaniel and Xenos teleport up there to finish the job, and we give chase. Just like Final Fantasy IV, we travel to the moon. We meet up with more of those Amarat spirits, the masked guys who are trapped here too, and they try to help us keep Zodiark sealed. Help also comes in the form of a bright glowing dog who flies us around on his back. Oh, okay, thank you. But the dog is not enough. The seal is broken. Fandaniel dives in and sacrifices himself, and we are thrown into battle with the being we thought would be the final boss for so long, but it's only the halfway point of the expansion. It feels like a final boss fight. It's really tough, but we do defeat him, which is exactly what they wanted us to do. Because with Zodiark gone, the final days can truly begin. Retreating with the big robe people, the Watcher explains that Heidelin's backup plan for the moon, if the prison thing didn't work out, would be that it would be a vessel to carry people to a new home. So I guess we're just giving up now. We take our new dog and enter the moon facility run by little rabbit people, the Loprites, from Final Fantasy IV. They have been preparing this vessel for 12,000 years, spending every second working on their jobs designated by their very names, and we spend a bunch of time motivating them to believe in themselves after all this time. Touching down back home, Alice and Alphanod's dad makes an announcement to the townspeople saying, yeah, so this is our big secret. We were in cahoots with the rabbit people to escape the doomsday that is now upon us. We didn't want to help you because we knew it was hopeless, so we just tried preserving all the knowledge we can, and we were going to build a vessel to leave. So the townspeople are all like, wow, okay, I guess we're going to the moon. When night falls, you get a special optional cutscene with the person of your choice. I chose Alice, who confides in me just how terrified she is about the situation and how horrifying it was when I was possessed. It's another great scene. Endwalker really enjoys spending time with characters and having heart-to-heart scenes, and so do I. I am loving this. This is always what I felt was missing from the last expansions. We don't need to just keep moving plot to plot. We can stop and be with the characters for a while. This is the end of the world. What's going through their heads? The next day, the blood moon rises and monsters ravage the world. We discover that likely through the power of Akasha, when your negative emotions overwhelm you to such a high level, that's when you transform into one of these monsters. Everyone is giving up hope when facing the end of the world, and depression is spreading like a disease. It's like a domino effect, making matters worse and worse. Virtra helps us try encouraging people to stay strong by revealing his true dragon form to the people. Things calm down, well, as much as they can, as the Elpis flower we received disintegrates. We need to find out more information about this phenomenon and this flower, so in order to do that, we need information from an ancient, somebody who was around ages ago, and we do know one person, kind of, so we head back to the first to talk with Elidibus. Remember, when we beat him, His soul was absorbed into the crystal tower, and he's just sort of been stuck here all this time. We ask him about the Elpis flower, and he says that it's from a place where back in the day an Ascian named Hermes would create beings like that could feed off emotions. Now that Elidibus is in this tower and can control it, he has the power to send us to that place back in time, but it will take all of his essence. He reflects, and with the Zodiarch gone and all his friends gone, he doesn't feel like he has any reason to exist anymore anyway. And with the last bit of his soul left, our sworn enemy helps us in our cause. In the past, we run into a younger Emmett Selk and our mutual friend Hythlodius, who we got to know as a spirit before. They're kind of freaked out, they don't know who or what we are or what our deal is, but they lead us to Hermes, who tells us about that energy source we only just heard of. It's not called Akasha here, they call it Dynamis. And it's not just flowers that can be created from it. Hermes made Medion, a little bird girl, a full free will having living being. He's working with Dynamis in hopes of being able to control it one day in all its power, all its abundance, which is much wider than Aether. And we have some adventure interacting with his weird experimental amalgamation creatures. We also casually meet Vena, the lady destined to become Hydaelyn. She sees through us and wants to talk. So we sit down with her, Emmett, and Hythlodius and tell them about the whole story of Final Fantasy XIV, everything that happens in the future. And they're just like, what? Specifically, Emmett Selk does not like his portrayal of being a maniac in this story, and he runs off. But Vena believes you and wants to work more towards saving this future. She's like, well, we should probably tell Hermes all this if he is supposed to be at the crux of the whole thing. When we do, Medion loses herself and connects to a hive mind that scans other stars, all in an attempt to answer the question that Hermes presented to her. Why do you live? But she can't find an answer. Every star she scans has been wiped of all life due to other various apocalypses, some natural, some caused by man. It's like every world is just destined to fail, and there's no point of anything. We try to take her away and calm her down when Hermes goes God mode and flies off with her, leading to the next dungeon. The both of them say that life is now meaningless and we should all give up, but we're like, no, so we beat them up. Medion still manages to escape, which means that someday in the future, she will bring about the final days. With everything we've learned, Vena tells us it's time to go back to the future. And with everything she learned, she wants to stay behind and use her knowledge to come up with a thousands of year-long plan to stop the final days over time. And we get to see some long-awaited scenes showing her and her journey becoming the Hydaelyn we know. It's really cool. We arrive in time to help our crew kill off some blasphemies and save people because they just can't get anything done without us. And Xenos arrives. He kills some monsters himself as a way of just training for his big rematch with us. Again, he still just wants to fight. That's his only thing. Alice says what we're all thinking when she snaps at him, like, you're seriously just doing this because you want a big fight? Like, that's really your only character motivation? And he's like, yes, and walks away. Okay, so he still sucks. But now that all the cards are on the table, we're back to convincing the Sharlayans to work with us. The space arc they've been working on to escape is still not functional enough to get that many people to the moon in time. So we're gonna help them try and fix it. The solution is to power the arc with pieces of Dalamud that fell to the Earth during the calamity of the original 14. And we also find out a fun fact where most of the Scion's expenditures has been paid for secretly by Alphinaud and Alice's mom, which is really funny. And finally, they convince their dad to stop being such a boomer. Now everyone is united. The everyone is here theme continues through this dungeon of old foes, ending in our reunion with Hydaelyn. She's like, we meet again. I have one more test for you. We need to see if you're capable of killing that bird girl. Let's find out by fighting. After a big battle, we beat her and she says, thanks. Now I know you can really do it. Here's a tracking device to find Medion. And also, you can have the giant crystal to use as fuel for your rocket ship. Oh, good, because I guess we need a lot of fuel. Because we don't even just use that, we also use the Aether from all of the primals, all of the gods we've slain in the past. Even King Moggy Mog makes an appearance. Everybody turns into fuel. The end game was fuel all along. Meteon tries to intercept us as we go, and somehow Thancred teleports away with her as we land in the final area, Ultima Thule. This is a land made up of the destroyed worlds Meteon saw. One of them was of the dragons, and Estinian is taken away. One of them was of little alien fellas named the Aya, and Y'shtola and Uri and Jer are taken away. Every member of the party, every friend you made along the way is picked off one by one with tearful goodbyes and promises to return until all that's left is you. In a dramatic, slow walk to the end, you encounter many souls that have interacted with you over this long journey, hearing some voices that you haven't heard in ages. At the top, everyone comes back to face the final boss, even Emmett and Hythlo from the past. Emmett has a funny line telling us how we've come this far across space and time and still haven't explored that much of the world we live on. When this is all said and done, he suggests that maybe we should take some time off and explore the treasure islands or other continents of our home, just for fun. You know what, Emmett? That sounds like a great idea. The final dungeon, in my opinion, was the hardest story dungeon so far. It's probably because if the healer isn't paying attention, everyone on the team can just die instantly. And you know me, I'm not really paying attention. Meteon turns planet-throwing god for the finale, and we teleport all our friends away to keep them safe, because this is a job for the Warriors of Light. But then, we get some unexpected assistance.
Thought it was Shinryu, but
at the end of everything.
Xenos, right at the very end, becomes Shinryu again to bring us to Meteon's level, and he serves as a platform for the fight. That was his end game all along. But this fight really does go for an epic conclusion, with her smashing planets together just to hit us with the debris, then reversing time to do it again and catch us off guard. I think Zodiark was probably a harder fight, but this was crazier. When we win, all that's left is the void at the end of space and time. Meteon returns to her small bird girl form, and we teach her that there is meaning in life. We can create the meaning ourselves, whether it's through strengthening the bonds of friendship, working hard for that car you've had your eyes on, or decimating every single god you come into contact with. It's all at peace again, and we can finally rest. Oh wait, Xeno still wants to fight. In a one-on-one duel at the edge of the universe, we decide to just give this guy what he wants. Give him his stupid fight. At least now we can be done with him. This is the actual payoff to Xenos' story, and we saw glimpses into a more complex character in his last monologue. Him trying to be a mirror to us as we both lay on the ground, exhausted from punching each other. It's what I've been waiting for, but I'm sorry, it's too little too late. I'll just reiterate my feelings from earlier. You had so much time to give him this character development across all 3 of these expansions, but we ignored him until literally the last possible second after we killed the final boss. But I'm not gonna let that distract from the otherwise fantastic ending to this game. We wake up back in the spaceship, everyone's crying because they thought we were really gone, but we're not. We're safe. The world is safe. Everyone's happy as the credits appear over each character, including us. The Warrior of Light played by Rafa. That's
crap, we
me.
walked past him like...
And the very last thing, after some time passes, we see Alphinaud writing a letter to his folks, talking about the end of the Scions of the 7th Dawn. Each one of the members will go off to where they're needed most as they share their plans for the future. But I'm sure we'll have another adventure together someday. What about you, Refo? And then Refo goes, well, I wasn't sure what an ending would look like for an MMO that's not ending anytime soon, but I gotta say, they did it. I truly was not expecting it to be as definitive as it was. They wrapped up everything I could think of, everything major. I'm totally satisfied. This in every way felt like the final chapter of a story. There's an extended extra cinematic credits sequence, there's a slideshow of memories from everything that came before, there's a special piece of art of the characters, shots of crowds cheering across the world, a bird flying across the sky, Finn even. Just about every ending trope you can think of, and for the first time ever, no post-credits scene teasing something else. Well, they do the thing for the Raid series, but they always do that, and that's a side story. That doesn't count. Point is, if Final Fantasy XIV stopped here, it would feel natural. And you can't say that for any of the expansions that came before. If I had to be a critic, though, I would be critical of the overall package. Because yeah, all the other expansions, they flowed into each other. They were all part of the Hydaelyn Zodiac arc. But if we really take a step back and be honest, how relevant was most of the stuff that happened? Shadowbringers and Endwalker, they're a pair. Endwalker feels like a sequel to the events set up in Shadowbringers. And the overall story does feel like it has been mostly planned from the start of that expansion. But Heavensward, Stormblood, the base game, they feel pretty self-contained. The Ascians are there, they're messing around, they're always doing something, but we don't know anything about them until Shadowbringers. Zodiac is nothing more than a scary sounding name for over 200 hours. I'm just saying, for my own personal tastes, I do wish the overall story felt like one giant arc, the way people say it's supposed to be. That's why I get so heated up about Xenos. He defines wasted potential. He is all the bad MMO story pacing condensed into one plot element. If every plot was executed the way his was, this would be a much angrier review. But Endwalker did not mess around. I was worried it would be another mostly self-contained story. And then maybe at the very end they throw in Zodiac and like that's it. But that's not what happened. This expansion hits the ground running, payoff after payoff, with barely any time spent on pointless tangents that upset me in the past. It's a 40-hour story in which the world is falling apart for all 40 of those hours. It's like if they took the series finale of a TV show and said, nah, make that the whole season. And it somehow doesn't feel bloated. I was excited every step of the way, constantly asking, they're doing this now? This isn't the ending? There's gonna be more after this? Like, that's exactly how I want to feel going into a big finale. And I'm going into the Endwalker patches and Dawn Trail after, still excited, expecting a nice, fresh start, low-stakes story, because you got me, Final Fantasy XIV. I'm hooked. I think I'm probably going to be playing every expansion that comes out until this game dies. Again. Or I die. Again.
Because you failed. Because you foolishly thought had takes to review every Final Fantasy with a deadline. You even had a hubris to say you'd review every Final Fantasy or die. So please know, Tom, that you died as a hero. Nor really a villain. Just a very disappointing NPC. Final Fantasy XVI could have been something special. I'd love to hear your thoughts.